bust his foot. We had a very interesting trip. We spent 9 days on the Shearwater, a specialist dive boat, diving with sharks from Palm Beach. And we were targeting oceanic white-tip sharks for a new documentary that we're making with award-winning producer George Schellinger. It was very successful. We were collaborating not only with GHRI scientists, but with Damien Chapman, who's a past student of Mahmoud's, past Nova student, now working at Stony Brook University in New York. And we were filming all their tracking work on oceanic white-tip sharks, which is one of the last species about which we know very little in the open ocean. So it was a really fantastic trip. Anyway, if you want to ask any questions about that, please do. And Alexa, do you want to have a word?
I guess you're the main star for tonight, so any questions you have for Guy and Mahmoud about their work, of course, and then if you have any questions about the production, I'd be happy to answer that as well. Guy just mentioned George Challenger. A lot of the underwater footage you saw in this of the free-swimming sharks was actually given to us by both Guy and George Challenger as well, so we couldn't have done that without them.
All right, let's have some hands. That's it. All right, bye. All right, let's go back to this other show we're doing. Just to let you know, we tagged. Well, the other team tagged about 25 oceanic white-tips. We put a spot tag on one oceanic white-tip. Again, as you saw in the documentary, this is an animal that spent a great deal of time right at the surface. So these techniques of tracking them are actually working. And as we hit the dock today, Brad checked the emails, and we've got like 32, 33 hits already from this animal that we tagged 3 days ago. So it's amazing how this technology works. Yes, sir, you had a question there? No. Yes?
The tracking device that you put onto the shark, does it cause any damage subsequently?
Not as far as we know, and the reason I say that is we've been tracking some of these animals. In fact, one of them is now coming up to 3 years, and all the long-term tracks are showing sort of almost predictable behavior in the sense that the animals are migrating like other animals are migrating. So the pattern seems to be is the same. Now, people do often ask us about the pain that's caused when we drill these tags into the fins, and it turns out that the fins have very few nerve endings and almost no blood supply. I'm not sure why that is, but that as a result of that, the sharks, we believe, don't really feel any pain from that. And the analogy, I think we might mention this in the documentary, is sort of like cutting your fingernails, or at the very worst, piercing your ear. That sort of, just short-term type of pain. So from the fact that we hear from these sharks for as long as we do, we make the assumption that there is no damage.
I wouldn't be too worried about that, people, because it's a lot better than getting a flying gaff stuck in your head. Yes, ma'am.
You had mentioned in the film about the sharks giving birth, and is there a specific area that is like a birthing station, or is it just an individual experience?
Well, that's one of the questions that we and other people are trying to answer regarding shark biology. It's really important to find out where they're mating, what giving birth, what their migratory pathways are. And now for tiger sharks, which is the focus of this documentary, nobody really knows that. And that's one of the questions that we had. And hopefully we can determine that by their movement behavior over a long period of time. That information is known for some sharks. Some sharks predictably give birth in shallow bays, but for tiger sharks, nobody knows.
Yes, ma'am.
I think some of the painted sharks existed and get rid of the predator. Has any other type of fish taken the shark's place of being the prime fish predator? Is that
Replacement of an apex apex predators, your question. Given the void created by the removal of sharks, what other animals are taking their place? We don't really know, because all the other top predators, which include the billfish and the tunas, are under the same pressure. In fact, probably more. That's a very good question. So,
yes, we fish in the backcountry in the Keys, and we see small sharks back there fairly frequently,
yeah.
2 to 3 feet long. And I was wondering where the parents of those sharks come and they ever figure that out from the migration patterns.
Well, we do know that some shark species do puff in very shallow water, and stingrays do that too, simply to protect, have their young in a sheltered place, protected from large individuals of the same species, which will prey upon the juveniles and other species. So there's a lot of inter- and intra-specific predation of juveniles, which is why they hang out in mangrove areas like the backcountry areas where you find redfish and snook and tarpon and so on. Yes, ma'am.
The docents of the Art Museum are learning so much, and we thank you very much for the exhibit. But we are asked questions that we can't answer, and I'm hoping that you can help us.
Yeah.
This one is about the uniqueness of the rows of teeth that sharks have, and when they lose the front teeth, the back ones, we're told, move in to fill in the space.
Correct.
Can you explain that process? It's just unimaginable.
Quickly, just to say that the whole physiology and anatomy is quite different from a bony fish, which will have teeth a bit like us embedded in the bone, growing, and they stay, forever for the most part. Cartilaginous fishes, which are the sharks and rays, the teeth grows like a conveyor belt. So the very young teeth, being newly formed, are at the back of the jaw, the back of the edge of the jaw, and the teeth in use, which are mature and large, are at the front. And they're not connected, there is no bone, so there's no real solid anchor. It's really a very hard and connected tissue. And once a tooth comes to the edge, it either falls out naturally or it gets dislodged in the act of feeding, and one moves in from behind. And most sharks have between 5 to 8 rows of teeth. And it's really, if you can consider it as a conveyor belt of teeth moving like this over the shark's lifetime. So each shark may produce tens of thousands of teeth in its lifetime. Quite unique. By the way, I want to add, I agree about the shark art show. It's probably the most comprehensive collection of shark art ever collected anywhere in the world. And I want to congratulate Mr. Lippman and his team for putting on a fantastic show. I'm very glad to be a part of it. I have 4 or 5 pieces in there, including one about the oceanic whitetips, a species we just spent some time with. But if you haven't had a chance to look at the exhibit, please do. It really is very comprehensive, very authoritative, and I think very educational. And so encourage people to come and look at it, bring friends and family and kids. It really is a great show. Yes, ma'am.
If there's so much fishing going on with these sharks for the fins, where does it reach the point when they become an endangered species? And what then is done?
Well, unfortunately, we're already at that point for a few species, and the concern is that if this exploitation, if the level of exploitation isn't cut back, many more species are going to be in that situation where they become endangered. In fact, right now, the U.S. government is considering a petition to list one particular species called scalp hammerhead as an endangered species on the U.S. Endangered Species Act. But as you might suspect, there's always a lot of, it's a political situation, there's lots of politics that involve a lot of people in the industry are opposed to it, because it sets a precedent that opens the door, if you will, for other species. The reality is that what oceanic whitetip sharks that Guy and I and Dr. Lauderdale and I were just studying in the Bahamas, that was considered to be one of the most common sharks in the ocean around the world. Now, commercial fishermen, who are both at Casper mostly, hardly see any of these sharks in most parts of the world. The Bahamas is a unique place for them for some reason. Actually, the reason probably is that the Bahamas banned long-lining fishing about 20 years ago. Right? And that might be the only reason that there are some of these oceanic whitetip sharks left. What can be done about it? I'll let Guy handle this because he has a foundation called Guy Harvey Foundation that is actually doing quite a lot of work in this regard.
Well, added to that, there's an organisation called the IUCN, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, that analyses the populations based on research work done by people like Mahmood and Brad on an annual basis, and will categorise the rarity or commonness of certain species. So that's a very good reference material for people who want to go on a website and check out, what is a rare species, what is overfish, what is not. But to become active, and we talk about this all the time, to become an ambassador for sharks is to get off your ass and go and do something about it, which is to support people like the Guy Harvey Research Institute, support their research efforts, support the conservation programs, become active and join some kind of local membership, something you can go to on a monthly basis, perhaps join a regional organisation, and by all means join a national organisation, and do your part. It's no use sitting down and grumbling about it. You help by protecting species by not consuming them, like groupers, for example. In the Cayman Islands, we're very against the consumption of groupers. We tell all the restaurants not to serve groupers because they can be protected by the lack of demand. It's all about demand and supply. So be active, join something, spend a little money on it, and become involved. You can visit guyharvey.com or guyharveyoceanfoundation.org as a local organisation, and then find out about some other regional ones that you can support. So get involved.
Can you give us some thoughts about the tourist industry with people who dive with sharks? There's some insight into that.
Shark ecotourism has become a very important marine activity in certain Caribbean islands and Central American islands, and in the Pacific too. The latest figures we had out of the Bahamas from last year, when we were working closely with Bahamas National Trust to encourage the government to protect sharks, not only because of their importance as predators and maintaining equilibrium in the reef systems, but from the socio-economic value. $18 billion was the figure quoted last year, generated by shark ecotourism, and that's not killing a single animal. So, while some governments may be wary about the consequences of encouraging interactions, feeding sharks, then becoming conditioned to human presence, that may be the case, but it's still a lot better off than having dead sharks everywhere. So I don't have any argument about having properly organised, careful, safe shark interaction programs with whatever species are available. In Florida, it's banned, of course. You're not allowed to feed sharks. Yes, sir.
So as far as consumption is concerned, should we only farm fish then? How do we help?
I'm not going to go near that one. Sorry. There is a very cool fish on the horizon that could be the saviour of many marine fish called the tilapia, which growing up in Jamaica, we used to have them in the ponds where on my dad's cattle farm. We used to catch them. They were this size. They look pretty cool. They were kind of black with a red edge, but they would eat anything. And they've been now morphed genetically so they look more golden, pinkish, look more appealing to the European or the American housewife or the whole fish. But they will eat anything, and they're a very hardy animal. They can be out of the water for up to 2 hours without dying. They're indestructible, and they don't taste bad at all. They don't have that freshwater fish taste. And so if you can feed any fish on vegetable matter or soy product or something like that, rather than feeding them animal protein, you're ahead of the game. And that's where the future lies. In the Far East, they raise a lot of milkfish on the same premise. Do you want to add any other species you know?
Yeah, I think there's a big push to try and grow more and more fish to replace fishing of natural stocks. The problem comes into the fact that for many of these cultured fish, the growers are using other wild fish to feed these fish, and as a result, so things like anchovies, and there's such a huge amount of exploitation of these smaller fish that is now affecting the ecosystem in different ways. So aquaculture is not all aquaculture of it's not always the answer, but it depends on the species. For example, tilapia is a really good environmentally benign fish to eat.
You see tilapia on the menu, eat it.
And live fish?
And live fish, yeah. So, and we had a question back there, yes. Yep, you.
Oh, I'm just wondering, I read recently that the shark fin has no flavor at all. So is it just the status symbol that they're killing thousands and thousands of sharks just to be socially elite?
Well, as far as we know, that is indeed the case. The taste in shark fin soup comes from the stock that they add, which is typically chicken or pork or beef. But the tricky part here is that shark fins have been consumed for nearly 2,000 years, and it's not, and as I understand it, the consumption is not for the taste as much as it is for what cultures that consume it consider healthful properties in general, in terms of energy balance. So it's not about the taste for them. It's more about these other types of benefits.
Yes, sir.
Do we have any idea, as far as whale evolution in favor of salt water or fresh water for sharks? Is time?
Well, I don't think I have a particularly good answer to that, other than to speculate about the fact that all species evolve somewhere, right? And all the genetic studies that have been done are suggesting that many of the common sharks, especially sharks like that you might recognize, the silkies and dusties and spinners and so on, that have global distributions originated in the Pacific and then spread out from there. They tend, for the almost all of them are, as I think you know, tend to be saltwater. But there are some sharks that are freshwater, and there are certainly rays that are freshwater, and there's certainly some sharks that can occupy both saltwater and freshwater. Bull sharks are a prime example of that. They can go thousands of miles up streams and rivers. Why does evolution favor that? I'm afraid I can't really answer that. There is somebody in the audience that might have a much better perspective. Brad, any suggestions of that?
Well, I think they evolved in the ocean, and it's expensive to go into freshwater energetically. It takes a lot of energy to balance water and salts, and bony fish have done that. That's why there's 20,000 species of bony fish that are in all these different rivers and lakes and streams, but there's only 1,000 species of sharks and skates and rays. They haven't developed the capability to go into freshwater.
Well, to add to that, they have buoyancy issues already in saltwater, so in freshwater that would be exacerbated. So, yeah. But all sharks are predators, by the way. I hope you realize that. There are no vegetarian sharks.
Have you ever recaptured any of the sharks that you've captured or seen them again?
Yes, we have. In fact, on this trip, we encountered one of the white tips that was previously tagged by the other team we were working with. And Jim Abernathy, who goes to Tiger Beach just north of Freeport, Bahamas, there on a weekly basis, has filmed 2 or 3 of the sharks that we tagged in Bermuda with the spot tag and the dorsal fin. Yes, sir.
What is the most heavily threatened shark here in the southeast Florida coast?
In my opinion, it would be the great hammerhead, but Mahmood may want to add some species to that.
No, I agree with that. There's some quite robust data showing that hammerheads, the large hammerheads in general, along in the western Atlantic, have declined tremendously over the last almost 20 years now. And so I would say that if you just want a shark to focus your attention on in terms of protection locally, I would go with the great hammerhead.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Harvey, you seem to be so involved in this. How is your art coming along? Have you put that to the wayside? Are you do both, or what's your favorite?
a jack of all trades. I make everything work, so don't worry about that. No, I have a great team, and some of whom are here tonight, and I want to thank my team at Harvey Inc. and thank them for their support. While I go gallivanting, making documentaries, they do all the hard work for me.
So what do you like best? Do you like both, or?
I love it all. I like being on the open ocean, of course. Nothing more exciting than seeing a blue marlin come up on a teaser, or jumping in with an 11-foot tiger shark. It's all very gratifying and inspirational, and definitely the art thrives on the close encounters and the personal experiences, and without that, I wouldn't be as creative as I am.
Were you always creative from little age on up?
I think my parents would agree with that, yes. Sorry, I'm being facetious, but
Well, your art is beautiful. I used to go to classes, or you just came naturally?
No, completely naturally. I actually, because my background is in marine science, that's my profession. Hobby was my hobby was my art. So my hobby became my profession. But I did a lot of illustrations of scientific documents, manuals, all sorts of stuff, which helped, I guess, hone my style, my ability to recall detail and put it down authentically. And the authenticity is the key.
Thank you.
Thank you. At the back, sir.
Me. Are the female and male sharks mingle much, like except not just for the mating, but in general, are the popular similar? And the other question I have, do they have different, significant differences in the respiratory system than the other sharks?
Well, the first question is a very interesting one. I'll let you take that on, because as we research different species, we constantly run into animals of one sex, and we wonder why. And so let me have one answer that one.
There's an increasing body of evidence that is showing that the two sexes only come together mostly for mating, and after that they go their separate ways. And the question is why is that? And the assumption is that in sharks, mating is a rather violent process, at least to our eye, the way we look at it. And if you and the sharks don't have arms, and so what the males do is they will bite the females on their fins and subdue them and hold them in place to inseminate them. And if you were to watch videos of those encounters, you'd be almost shocked by how violent it is. We also see female sharks during mating season that have huge cuts and bites and scars that look like they might actually kill the female, but it doesn't. It turns out that female sharks have thicker skins. They actually have physically thicker skins. You might say the same thing about female sharks. And so, yeah, to answer your question, no, they tend not to stay together after mating. Great. What was my other question?
Is the respiratory system significantly different from the other sharks? Like, do they need constantly swim, or can they stay still and breathe?
Oh, right. There are some sharks, they're called round ventilators, that need to swim all the time. For example, hammerheads are a good example of that. In fact, that's one of the reasons why hammerheads don't survive at all on long lines. In fact, they die very quickly because they can't move very much. Or in captivity, you don't see them in aquarium. There are other sharks, like sand tiger sharks and butterhead sharks, which thrive, seem to do quite well without moving for long periods of time. So there are differences spiritually.
Let me take a little executive privilege here and ask Alexa what it was like to work with these crazy scientists on the board of the ship. Was it like herding sharks?
Definitely beat sitting in the office, I can tell you that. No, we had a great time. It was really a good time being out in the field with Brad and Mahmood and being able to interview Dr. Harvey. So it's always a real privilege to be able to go out there and you have the opportunity to document what scientists do every day in the field. And I think there's some really amazing work that's being done that we hope to document with our series, because a lot of people aren't even aware that some of this stuff is going on. So, if we can bring that to the attention of the public, then hopefully we've done our job.
Well, thank you very much. And with that, I think we'll close. Dr. Harvey has to catch a flight back to his home. So thank you very much, distinguished panel, and thank you all for coming.